We've grown so accustomed to being ruled by elderly politicians who are decaying in front of us that it's easy to forget how abnormal this actually is. But the truth is that there are countries in the world where the vast majority of elected officials are middle-aged and even capable of, if you can believe it, completing sentences. One of these countries is Sweden. Sweden's parliament is among the youngest in the world. The prime minister, speaker, first deputy speaker, second deputy speaker are all under the age of 60. This is a long-running trend in that country, which elected its youngest parliament in 2014. Going back for the last decade or so, Sweden hasn't had a prime minister over the age of 65. If you're looking for an explanation for why Sweden didn't lock down during COVID, and many people still are looking for an explanation, this seems like it might be a good place to start. Led by its relatively young government, Sweden didn't implement mask mandates. They didn't close the schools and restaurants and force everyone, regardless of their age, to stay in their little pods. Children didn't miss years of education and critical social development. Small businesses weren't destroyed. Pastors weren't hauled out of church services and thrown in prison. And after all that, after ignoring the infinite wisdom of Tony Fauci and the World Health Organization, Sweden recorded the lowest excess death rate of any European nation during COVID. In fact, Sweden's excess death rate was half of our country's. Suicide and overdoses didn't spike. The morgues weren't overrun with COVID fatalities. People over the age of 70, in many cases, voluntarily stayed home. For everyone else, life continued as normal. Now, in retrospect, these are maybe some of the benefits of having leaders on the right end of the actuarial table. As the last few years have demonstrated, when politicians aren't themselves 5 seconds from keeling over dead, they're less likely to bring down all of society in a desperate attempt to prolong their own lives. On the other hand, when you're governed by a gerontocracy, especially a secular gerontocracy, which has nothing to look forward to after death, then you can't count on that kind of stability. You can't be assured that your leaders won't declare an emergency and take away your rights any more than you can be assured that they won't start World War III in Ukraine because they want to play Churchill with the time they have left on Earth. It's no secret the United States has transformed into a gerontocracy in the last several years. Right now, roughly 1/4 of Congress is over the age of 70. And that number has never been higher in American history. In 1900, nearly 40% of the politicians in the Senate and the House were in their 40s. That number is now down to just 20%. And of course, as we know, the current president is now the oldest sitting president to ever hold the office. Joe Biden will turn 81 in just a couple of months. In fact, presidents now are so old that the two far and away frontrunners for their party's nominations, Biden and Trump, are both older than Bill Clinton is now, who was elected to his first term 3 decades ago. So when a current president is older than a former president who's been out of office for over 20 years, you know something is wrong. But you already knew all this. I mean, by this point, it's not exactly a secret that Joe Biden is old. What has only become apparent in recent days, however, is the extent of Joe Biden's decline, as well as the willingness of his staff to put his mental decay on full display for everyone to see. You know, we're all used to seeing footage of Biden falling apart or falling down or falling apart and then falling down in front of the cameras. What we're not used to seeing is what happened Sunday night in Hanoi. Joe Biden was in Vietnam, supposedly to project strength against China. The idea is that Vietnam and the United States will work together in a new strategic partnership that will somehow deter the Chinese government from, say, invading Taiwan. But in the end, in a shocking turn of events, Joe Biden did not project strength against China. Instead, Biden led a rambling 30-minute press conference during which he admitted that he was just following orders from his staffers by calling on pre-selected reporters. And then Biden appeared to lose his train of thought about a dozen times before saying out loud that he was going to bed. Watch.
Light let's see. I'm just following my orders here. Have a game plan. He may have a game plan. He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
That is maybe the one single quote that most encapsulates Biden's presidency. It's the quote he'll be remembered by. I don't know about you, but I'm going to bed. Now, I have to admit that at first I was a little underwhelmed by Trump's Sleepy Joe nickname for Biden. Mostly because I would have preferred an alliteration like Geriatric Joe or Bumblein Biden, something like that. But it turns out that Trump really nailed it. He really did. And this was not one isolated senior moment during the presser either. This went on for a while. Towards the end of his press availability, Joe Biden referred to the Southern Hemisphere as the third world before realizing that's not something you're supposed to say out loud. And then Joe Biden's press secretary, like the man behind the curtain, cuts him off mid-sentence. Jazz music starts playing. The only thing they were missing was the big cartoon hook to drag him off stage. Watch this.
We talked about at the conference overall, we talked about stability. We talked about making sure that the third world, the Southern Hemisphere had access to change it, had access. It wasn't confrontational at all. He came up to me and said,
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you bringing U.S. strategic interests above human rights here in Vietnam?
I've raised it with every person I've met with.
Mr. President,
are you worried about your son being indicted, Mr. President?
The President of the United States, everybody. I don't think we've ever seen that before. I don't think we've ever seen staffers cut off a presidential press conference in mid-sentence because the president is babbling too much. And as embarrassing as this is, it would be a mistake to write it off as yet another Joe Biden gaffe and then just move on. And that's inevitably how these kinds of clips are typically spun in the media. The right uses them to say, Biden is old, and the left just ignores them. And then that's it. But there's something very significant about this. And perhaps the most significant takeaway from the whole incident is that this press conference happened at all. At no point did anyone in the White House, apparently, or the Pentagon or the State Department, veto the idea of Joe Biden taking a trip to Vietnam where he would inevitably beclown himself on camera. Why is that? They knew he'd humiliate himself and the country. Does every time he's asked to speak off the cuff. They knew that. And they also knew that unless they intervened, he'd never shut up at the podium. This is also why he's given so few press conferences, especially when compared to recent presidents, especially Donald Trump. So why was he up there at all? I mean, why go through the trouble of scheduling this trip? And why, as Joe Biden began rambling, did White House staffers twist the knife in such an overt public fashion, embarrassing him intentionally like that? Joe Biden's own press secretary played him out with lounge music against his wishes while he was still talking. It's hard to think of a more obvious way to humiliate a president of the United States. So if we're trying to intimidate China, this is a strange strategy, to say the least. On the other hand, if the goal was to give Xi Jinping a laugh and convince him that Taiwan is his for the taking, then actually the Biden administration just succeeded beyond its wildest imagination. The U.S. government, by sending Joe Biden to Hanoi, erased any doubt in Beijing as to the capability of Joe Biden to stand up for Taiwan or any other country in the region. You have to wonder if that was the real point of the trip. Maybe an administration that's beholden to China wanted to send a signal to Beijing that they have nothing to worry about. If that's the case, then Joe Biden's presser is just one of many such signals that have been sent to our adversaries in recent weeks. 81-year-old Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell isn't going to push back on China's territorial ambitions anytime soon. That much is clear. He's no longer able to reliably answer questions from the media without freezing up completely. In between reaffirming his indefinite commitment to spending billions of taxpayer dollars on Ukraine, Mitch McConnell is doing his best impression of a stroke victim. Now, you've likely seen the clips of McConnell standing at the microphone, staring blankly off into space, unable to speak, somehow managing to make John Federman look downright communicative by comparison. Now, of course, McConnell's physician, after that happened, wrote a letter, kind of a nothing to see here letter, insisting that McConnell is in tip-top shape. But you would have to have dementia yourself to believe that. You know, for most homeowners, window replacement isn't something they've done before, and for many, it's not something they really want to do, but rather something they have to do. Well, if you've put off replacing windows in your home because it's too expensive, I have great news for you. You can now get a free in-home window consultation and free price quote from Renewal by Anderson. Renewal by Anderson's signature service is committed to giving you the best customer experience possible through the perfect combination of the best people in the industry, a superior process, and an exclusive product. Right now, Renewal by Anderson is offering free in-home or virtual consultation on durable quality, affordable windows or patio doors for $0 down, 0 payments, and 0 interest for a year. Text Walsh to 200-300 for your free consultation and to save $375 off every window and $750 off every door. These savings won't last long, so be sure to check it out by texting Walsh to 200-300. That's Walsh to 200-300. Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions is posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates apply. Reply STOP to opt out. Go to windowappointmentnow.com for full offer details. You know, since Roe v. Wade was overturned, the left has lost their minds, making abortion their official sacrament. But despite this, the pro-life efforts are still booming. You heard that right. Despite the narrative that pro-lifers, that you hear about pro-lifers, they have not gone away. They've increased in number. As one of the largest pro-life organizations in the world, no one's in a better position than 40 Days for Life to end abortion in each state in a post-Roe America. 40 Days for Life is changing hearts and minds in the most blue pro-abortion states. They've had a record number of locations since Roe was overturned, and they grew in both volunteers and locations. With about 1 million volunteers in 1,500 cities, they hold peaceful vigils outside abortion facilities. You can help them fight the ongoing legal battles by protecting free speech for their volunteers by giving a tax-deductible gift of any amount at 40daysforlife.com. That's 40daysforlife.com. Last week, to give another example, 83-year-old Nancy Pelosi claimed that she's running again to represent San Francisco because she is in gratitude to her constituents who really need her to address the challenges the city is facing. Watch.
I feel very exhilarated by the encouragement I had to continue representing my great city of San Francisco. You have the White House behind you. I have homes in San Francisco behind me, and that is my strength. And the needs that our city have right now really call for me to stay another term. I had the privilege of representing San Francisco for a long time, and they have given me the latitude to serve as speaker, as leader for over 20 years, and whip as well. Visit 87 countries, served 30 years on the Intelligence Committee, all of those things. But at the same time, being central to my service was representing my district. In gratitude to them for that, I have agreed to stay on another term in order to help meet the needs that we have now.
How generous of her. In gratitude, she's going to remain in power. I'm so grateful that I will not relinquish power until I'm dead. That's the only way I'm going to relinquish it, because I'm so grateful. You know, in San Francisco, fecal matter is all over the place. Robberies are so frequent that news reporters can't cover crime anymore without getting robbed themselves. The city's office buildings are empty. Therefore, what San Francisco needs now, Nancy Pelosi says, is more of the same leadership that put them in that position to begin with. What it needs most of all is an ancient, decrepit old woman who's been in politics for 40 years and accomplished absolutely nothing the entire time. And somehow that sales pitch will work. Nancy Pelosi will indeed win re-election, assuming that she can survive to that point. In fact, if we're being honest, it may not even be necessary that she survives. Last year, a Democrat Pennsylvania state representative named Tony DeLuca was re-elected even though he died a month before Election Day. And in that same election, coincidentally enough, John Federman became one of Pennsylvania's 2 senators, even though he hasn't been able to string together sentences for a long time. And you've seen all the painful videos of the last year or so. And in case you're wondering if Federman has maybe improved in recent weeks, the answer is that he has not. Here he was, just to show you, filming a campaign video for Bob Casey while wearing his signature hobo hoodie, during which Casey is basically holding back laughter because of how absurd the whole thing is. Watch.
Hey, Bob Casey.
John Federman.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, last year you all helped elect John Federman to the United States Senate. I need your help in 2024. Please chip in whatever you can.
I'm telling you how serious it is that we make sure we keep Bob Casey in the Senate right now. Can you help chipping in a couple bucks to make sure we keep Bob Casey right here in this Senate right now? Bob Casey.
Thanks, John Federman.
Hey, last year you guys elected a cucumber to the Senate. So if you don't elect me, then I'm going to be very insulted. So if you're going to elect this guy, then why wouldn't you also elect me? It's an interesting pitch. I mean, he makes a good point, actually. The 54-year-old adult male says, "Can you help chipping in a couple bucks? This is serious." Pennsylvania, this is a guy who wants to represent Pennsylvania in the U.S. Senate. Can't even be bothered to take off the hoodie and put on a suit. John Federman, though, is not an elderly man, but he's the kind of politician who could only get elected in a gerontocracy. Only a country that has stopped caring about mental competence would even contemplate electing someone like Federman to represent a state of 13 million people. And we are long past that point. Dianne Feinstein doesn't understand much, but she understands that at least. She currently represents a state of 40 million people, even after surrendering power of attorney to her daughter. Feinstein has also apparently surrendered legislative powers to her staff, who told her to shut up and vote aye in the middle of a hearing just last month. This is a pretty incredible clip. Watch this.
Note the presence of a quorum. We will now vote to report the Defense Appropriations Bill favorably, subject to amendment. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Feinstein.
Say aye.
Pardon me?
Aye.
Yeah.
Just say
I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense. And it funds priorities submitted.
Yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just
Great.
aye.
Thank you.
Senator Durbin, Senator Reid.
Now, when you watch that, beyond the obvious point, which is that Dianne Feinstein is a decaying husk who shouldn't even have a driver's license, much less a Senate seat, notice again how the staff handle the situation. They just come right out and tell Feinstein what to do in full view of the public. They're not ashamed in any way of admitting that they are running Feinstein's office. And in that respect, they're just like Joe Biden's handlers, who have no problem silencing the President of the United States with jazz music like he's a drunk winner at some award show that nobody watches. What this shows us is not simply that we're living in a gerontocracy. I mean, it's much worse than that. These episodes reveal that, like the late Soviet Empire, we've actually gotten used to living in a gerontocracy. We're not ashamed of it anymore. Political operatives whose entire job is to shield their bosses from bad press have no problem shoving this in our faces. This means that our gerontocracy is much more than an international embarrassment. It's now a full-blown national security crisis. They aren't just laughing at our leaders in East Asia right now. This isn't just social media fodder for them. At this moment, our enemies are proceeding with the understanding that our government is incapable of holding a press conference, much less mounting any kind of defensive response to a surprise attack. And unfortunately for all of us, when it comes to that, they're probably right. Thanks for checking out this video. If you'd like to listen to my full podcast on the go, you can check out The Matt Walsh Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.